So we have reached a little bit over halfway point of this season, and I know it's been a very fast season, and that it felt like the season just started yesterday, and the next thing you know, we're halfway through the season. And I'll tell you what, there's definitely been a lot of surprises this season, and there are definitely a lot of prediction that I made back in the beginning of the season completely proven wrong, and that I am going to really look at it very badly by the end of the season and see how many bad prediction that I made in the beginning of the season. But as we hit to the middle of the season, I want to take a look at the standings of both conferences, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about where each team are right now, and also once I finish that, I'm going to kind of start off at the top of each conference and then head to the bottom. I'll talk about who exactly could finish at the top spot of both conferences, and then most importantly, I want to talk about the playoff race. And I think the playoff race is something that I'm going to be spent a lot more on, because that's where a lot of people gets very interested when they see the standing. Not that seeing that finish in the top spot is not as interesting as the playoff race, but the playoff race is definitely very interesting. But we start off with the Eastern Conference, which, you know, the Eastern Conference, no doubt this season has been the weaker conference, and that it feels like the pendulum has once again swirled back to the Western Conference as the more stronger conference. But, you know, there's definitely some surprises in terms of the Eastern Conference. For once, the top two where I thought it was going to be the Red Bulls and Atlanta is not the case. In fact, it's actually the Union who currently is at the top of the Eastern Conference with 10 wins, 6 draws, 5 losses, and they have scored 39 goals, conceded 28 goals, and have a plus 11 goal differential with 36 points. The plus 11 goal differential is the best in the Eastern Conference, and the 39 goals that they scored this season is also the best in the Eastern Conference right now. Now, following that, we got DC United, who currently have 8 wins, 7 draws, and 5 losses. Or actually, I think this is the other way around. It should be 8 wins, 5 draws, and 7 losses that they have. And currently, they only scored 25 goals this season, which is definitely very low for a team that is in second place. But considering the fact that DC's been having a lot of trouble in terms of scoring goal lately, this number is not very surprised, the fact that it is very low. And they have conceded 21 goals this season and have a plus 4 goal differential with 31 points so far this season. Then you got Atlanta United, who currently have a record of 9-3-7 and scored 27 goals, conceded 23 goals this season, has a plus 4 goal differential, and have a point total of 30 points. Then you got Montreal, has a record of 9 wins, 3 draws, and 9 losses, have a goal scoring tally of 26, have a goal allowed tally of 34, and actually have a minus 8 goal differential right now. And a lot of the reason why they have such a bad goal differential and yet they're still so high up in the stands is that, you guys remember they lost 7-1 against Sporting KC? Yeah, that does play a lot into that. And also, this is not one of those teams that blow teams out game in and game out. When they, of course, win games, they win it by a very close margin. When they lose games, sometimes they lose it by a very big margin, and sometimes they do it in a very small margin, which is why their goal differential is very bad right now. And they currently have 30 points so far, so they're tied with Atlanta in terms of third place. Then we have NYCFC, who's currently 5th in the standing, but they actually have played the fewest game in the Eastern Conference, and alongside with the Timbers, they actually have played the fewest game in the league. Only 17 games have been playing. They have 7 wins, 8 draw, 2 losses, which is the fewest in the Eastern Conference, and tied with LAFC with the fewest in the league right now. They have scored 30 goals, allowed 20, and have a plus 10 goal differential, and have a total of 29 points. And despite the fact that NYCFC is very low right now, they actually have the same point per game ratio as the Union has. So if the season ends right now, and if the season, of course, only look at points per game ratio, then NYCFC and the Union would be at the top of the Eastern Conference. And I have no doubt NYCFC will continue to climb up the standing once they play those games in hand that they have. Then you got the Red Bulls, who currently have a record of 8-4-7 and have scored 33 goals, allow 27 with a +6 goal differential and have 28 points. Then you got Toronto FC with a record of 6-5-8, and they currently have scored 30 goals but conceded 33 and have a -3 goal differential and have 23 points right now. And then we look at below the red line right now, we got New England, who is actually tied with TFC in terms of the wins, draw, and loss ratio, and also the points total. But New England currently has a -14 goal differential, with them scoring 22 goals, conceding 36. And a lot of that, the reason why New England has a -14 goal differential was because when New England was under Brad Friedel, they were absolutely hot mess, and the fact that they were conceding goals left and right and suffering big losses. But recently, now that they have got hot, and that ever since Bruce Arena has taken control of this team has slowly rising up the table, and that they are really on verge of actually going above the red line right now. Then you got Orlando City, who is right behind them with a record of 6-4-9, and they have a dead even in terms of the goal score and goal differential at 27 apiece, with a 0 goal differential and 22 points. Then you got the Chicago Fire with a record of 5-7-8. They've scored 31 goals this season, allow 29, and have a +2 goal differential and have 22 points this season. Then we got the Columbus Crew, who currently have a record of 5-2-13, and they only have scored 12 goals this season, which I believe that is the lowest amount of goals that any team have scored so far this season. I think they are by far the lowest amount. I want to see who exactly is the next lowest team to have scored. I think FC Cincinnati might be the next lowest team in terms of the goal scoring chart, but 12 goals this season and conceding 30 this season with a -13, or actually it shouldn't be a -13, it's a -18 goal differential with 17 points so far this season, while their Ohio rival FC Cincinnati currently bottom of the Eastern Conference with 4 wins, 2 draw, and 13 losses, and only scored 18 goals and conceded 44 goals this season, which is the worst goal allowed record of every team in MLS, and they currently have given up the most goal so far this season in MLS, and they have a -26 goal differential, which is also the worst goal differential in the league with only 14 points, and not to mention that they have the worst record in MLS right now. But when you look at the Eastern Conference, and starting at the top of the Eastern Conference, the Union, obviously they're top of the Eastern Conference, but the thing is, in recent week, they haven't really looked like a team that should belong in that top spot, and that they have had their struggles in these past couple of weeks. I mean, they have dropped points a couple of times in these last couple of weeks, and one thing that I'm started to see what the Union have been struggling is at home. And their home form this season, although they do have a positive, they do have a winning record at home, it's not as good as you would think. I think they have a record of 6-3-4 at home, although the road record, of course, makes up for their kind of mediocre kind of home record. So that is definitely a little bit concerning for the Union, considering the fact that, if they do finish at the top of the Eastern Conference, they're going to have home field advantage throughout the entire playoffs until we get into the MLS Cup final. But the fact that this is a team that struggle at home and aren't able to get 3 points at home, that kind of does go against them in terms of them having all the home games. And it feels like this Union team would better off with them playing on the road, because I have seen that this team has definitely done much better on the road than they have done at home so far. And the other issue I have with the Union is that teams behind them is definitely catching them up, and that I just have the feeling that eventually Atlanta is gonna catch the Union up. Like right now, I think that top spot, the Union is holding it firmly right now, but I just have a feeling with Atlanta, who has kind of been pretty hot, but then kind of gone cold a little bit in these recent weeks, and then you got NYCFC, who by far I think is going to most likely be the team that can finish top of the Eastern Conference with the amount of games that they have in hand over the team that is above him. Like the team above them, they at least have 2 games in hand over them, and they're only like 7 points behind the Union with 4 games in hand over the Union. So I think that is a team that could finish top. The Red Bulls could be another team that can finish top. I just think the Union could eventually kind of slip up, and that if they if they don't continue to, of course, win games and continue to do well, maybe they'll slip up and they might not finish first in the Eastern Conference. But having said that, I kind of had the same feeling for these past couple of weeks that I feel like the Union eventually is going to slip up. And I also feel like these teams that is above, like Montreal, DC, and the Union, these team that has been consistently in the top 3 so far in the Eastern Conference, eventually things are going to kind of settle down, and eventually I think Atlanta and NYCFC is going to catch them, but that is not really the case, and that Atlanta is still 6 points behind the Union, although Atlanta, they do have games in hand over them, and that once those games in hand, and once everybody played 34 games, we'll see if the Union or DC is going to be. Now, I know for sure DC is not going to finish top, because my oh my, this issue of them not been able to put the ball into the back of net and having trouble in terms of scoring is really costing them. And I will definitely not be surprised to see DC in these next couple of weeks start to drop down the table if they continue to have this goal scoring problem, because it's one thing the fact that you have a good defense and that most of the time you've been able to only concede like 1 goal or 2 goals so that you of course don't lose or drop points, but it's another if you just cannot score goals and that you kind of hit a bit of a goal drought, which is kind of something what DC has experienced right now, as they have not scored more than a goal in every single game since when they drew 3-3 against DC or 3-3 against Chicago Fire a couple of games ago. And even if you look back to that one, it's been a while since DC has scored 2 goals. And as I mentioned many times before, this team should not be struggling in terms of goal scoring. This team definitely have the attacking piece, but the attacking piece that they have just for whatever reason are not hitting stride. Like Lucho Acosta, this season he's been completely different than what he is last season, and what I was hoping that this was perhaps the season that he's gonna break out so he can earn his move in Europe, that has definitely not come true. And Wayne Rooney, it seemed like Father Time is started to catch up to him, and that one good run that he has was just kind of what he gets, and that you'll start seeing why when DC bought Wayne Rooney and why there is a lot of big concern of the fact that in a couple of years he is going to get washed up, and that this is going to be the resort that you're going to see. So yeah, for DC, I am truly worried about them dropping down the table. But it's also the same thing for Montreal too. And I think Montreal is probably a team that I'm even more worried about dropping down, because you can see they are already started to slipping down the table in the standings right now. They're all the way now down to 4th, and they have played the most game out of anybody in the Eastern Conference besides the Union. So with all these teams that have games in hand, like NYCFC and the Red Bulls have games in hand, and that they're only 2 points behind Montreal, if they can win those games in hand and that Montreal continue to struggle as they have shown in the past couple of games, they can really find themselves right near the above the red line, and that if some of these teams that is below could get hot and that Montreal can't get going, yeah, I really fear that this team could actually miss the playoffs, and that I feel like with them this season, I don't think it's been a bad season for the Impact, and certainly it's been amazing the fact that they've been able to keep above their weight despite the fact that they don't have their most important player in Nacho Piatti, but it seems like it has really started catching up to them, and that all this kind of bunkering down and all this kind of just trying to somehow grind all 3 points is only going to work as far as it could until it's not going to work out so well. And that's what Montreal is dealing with right now, with them just they're so reliant on grinding out 3 points and trying to bunker that, yeah, it's only going to be a matter of time when that kind of tactics is not going to work out, and we start seeing that issue right now with the Impact. Now, Whereas NYCFC, I said that, I have no doubt that they are going to be rising up the table. Like, don't let this position distract you. The fact that NYCFC is one of the best team in the league right now. As I mentioned, only lost twice this season. Only LAFC is the other team that lost twice this season. This is one of the hottest team right now in the league, and a team that I think a lot of people should definitely keep an eye on as a team that is going to start rising up the table. Then, of course, you got the Red Bulls, which, eventually I think the Red Bulls would get it going. I mean, they've been having some hot and cold moment in these last couple of games, kind of similar to what Atlanta is having so far, but no doubt I think they're going to definitely make the playoffs, and eventually they'll find their way above the table, which now brings us in terms of the playoff race in the Eastern Conference, and talking about teams that is at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, because this is going to be pretty interesting in terms of the team that is in the bottom of the Eastern Conference. Like, I think there's really... I have no doubt that Columbus and FC Cincinnati, they are pretty much done this season. Like, I just don't see how both of these teams is going to find their way to be above. And even if Columbus is 6 points behind TFC in terms of the playoff spot, if you saw how bad Columbus has been and that they have only won one game out of their 14 games that they have been playing, yeah, that is definitely not going to get it due in terms of getting into the playoffs. And it's the same thing with FC Cincinnati. Like, they are still in a rebuilding mode. They're still trying to kind of reshuffle the squad so that they can at least not be completely totally embarrassed in their first expansion year. So I think both of these teams are probably done in terms of the playoffs, which leaves me to talk about the other three teams that's below the red line, which is New England, Orlando City, and the Chicago Fire. No doubt, I think New England, it could potentially be a team that goes above the red line and makes the playoffs, considering the fact that how good New England has been under Bruce Arena. And I've also now heard that New England is going to really break the bank in the transfer window in the summer. And the fact that if they do break the bank and bring some big kind of player like one of the players that they've been heavily linked with, that Cholos striker Gustavo Bo, this team is going to be a very dangerous team, and that this team could definitely be the dark horse in the Eastern Conference right now. And it just shows you a coaching change and a management change is all it takes to get a team that looked like is a hot garbage team to now being one of the most scariest and one of the teams that is definitely a heavy dark horse heading into the second half of the season and maybe heading into the playoffs. So I have no doubt that New England could go above the red line, which means that one of these teams have to drop below the red line, and the two teams that I do have worry about dropping below the red line is going to be Montreal and TFC, and mostly TFC because of the fact that they just have been wobbling through above the red line for so long, and that it's going to be a matter of time they are going to find themselves below the red line, and that unless they are able to do something in the transfer window to booster up their attack and also fix their defense, this team is in real dangers of actually going below the red line, and that New England might take that spot away from TFC. The other team with Orlando City and the Chicago Fire, I mean, the story for both of these teams is that if they can be consistent, like if they both of these teams are been having a pretty similar season where both of these teams has been very inconsistent, and that if both of these teams can have a consistent run and can actually have a kind of unbeaten streak going, then yeah, they can definitely go above the red line. But what I'm worried about both of these teams is that they've just been so inconsistent this year. I don't know, is it going to be enough to get them to go above the red line right now? Like, that some of the team above the red line is not going to have a very inconsistent run, and that I think now the Eastern Conference are starting to show that we already kind of have a good picture of who is actually maybe going to go to the playoffs, and that the spots of potentially for teams below the red line to get above the red line is started to kind of dwindle a little bit. So for these teams that is below the red line, they just cannot afford to have a very inconsistent run, and that they need to continue to push and try to put some pressure against the team that is above them. Otherwise, I think the Eastern Conference playoff picture might be set, and that I think the Union, DC, Atlanta, NYCFC, and the Red Bulls are probably going to be there, which really leaves me the question with Montreal, whether or not when they get PLT back in I believe in August, whether they can potentially push a run. And that TFC, the question of course has to be of the fact that this bad run that they've been going on for so long is going to eventually cost them, and that one of these teams below is going to take advantage of that. But that being said, let's now look at the Western Conference. And in the Western Conference, at top we got LAFC, who currently leads the Western Conference and also leads the Supporters Shield standing with a record of 13 wins, 4 draw, and 2 losses, which is the best record in MLS. They currently have scored 50 goals, which is the most in MLS, and currently have conceded only 16 goals, which is also the best in MLS, and have a goal differential of plus 34, the best in MLS, and have the best point total of 43 points. Now, in second is their crosstown rival, the Galaxy, who currently have a record of 11-1-7, and have scored 26 goals while conceding only 22, and have a goal differential of plus 4, and have a points total of 34 points, while the Seattle Sounders currently have a record of 9-5-5, currently have 29 goals scored while conceding 25, and have a plus 4 goal differential with 32 points. Then you got Minnesota with 9 wins, 3 draws, and 7 losses, and currently have 36 goals scored, 29 conceded, and have a goal differential of plus 7, and they have a points total of 30 points, while FC Dallas currently have a record of 8-5-7. They have scored 29 goals, conceded 25, and have a plus 4 goal differential while having 29 points. Then you got the San Jose Earthquakes with a record of 8-4-7. They are dead even in terms of the goal scoring and goal allowed with 30 goals each, and have a goal differential of 0 and have 28 points right now, while the Dynamo have a record of 8-3-7 and currently have 28 goals scored, 25 conceded, plus 3 goal differential, and have a 27 point tally. Now, below the red line, we got RSL, who currently have a record of 8-2-9 and have scored 25 goals, conceded 29, have a minus 4 goal differential, and have 26 points right now. Well, you got the Portland Timbers. They have a record of 7-2-8. They have scored 26 goals, conceded 28, and have a minus 2 goal differential with 23 points so far. Then you got Sporting KC with a record of 5-7-7, 29 goals scored, 34 conceded, minus 5 goal differential, and 22 points each. Then you got the Whitecaps at 20 or have scored 4 games. Well, they played 20 games and have won 4 games, lost 8 games, and drew 8 games, and have scored 22 goals while conceding 31, and have a minus 9 goal differential of 20 points. Then you got the Rapids with 5 wins, 10 draws, 4 losses, and have 29 goals scored, 38 concede, and have a record of minus 9 goal differential, and have 19 points so far. Now, in terms of the Western Conference, I'm going to really mostly focus on the playoff race and the madness that is going on in terms of the spot that is below third place, because I think it's pretty clear that we can say that LAFC is going to finish top of the Western Conference. Like, bearing any major collapse by LAFC in the second half of the season, and bearing just the fact that they just hit a major slide somewhere in the second half of the season, there is no doubt that LAFC is going to finish top, and that they are clear favorites of actually going to win the Supporters Shield this season. Like, they currently have a 7-point gap in terms of the Supporters Shield, and a 9-point gap over the nearest team that is in the Western Conference. Like, domination, it just does not get more dominant than what LAFC is doing right now. So no doubt in mind that they're going to finish top of the Western Conference, bearing any major collapse that they suffer in the second half of the season. Then you got the Galaxy. You know, the Galaxy is kind of like DC United, where it's a team that I don't think they should be this high in the table with the way that they've been playing. But the reason why they've been this high at the table is that time and time again, Zlatan has been able to bail them out a couple of times, and that they do have a couple of games where they didn't really need to rely on Zlatan scoring the goal, and that their attack was able to get a couple of goals to win those games. But majority of the games was because of Zlatan bailing them out, and it was once again the case against TFC, where they did not play well in that game, but they got bailed out by Zlatan by scoring those 2 goals, and that makes me very concerned about this Galaxy team because, I know Zlatan is one of, if not the best player in the league right now, and obviously he has a tremendous ego that has really make him become the biggest villain right now in MLS. But knowing the fact that with him started, like, there's been stretch where his age have definitely started to show, and that he kind of have started to become a little bit more and started to have some rough patches, and that's when the Galaxy really struggle, and that's when also the Galaxy started to lose those games and not able to find a way to score goals. So I'm really concerned about that. Like, I feel like eventually this is gonna come back to haunt the Galaxy, where if Zlatan is not scoring those goals, and that them being so one-dimensional, which is like their attacking kind of their main attacking strategy is basically just loft the ball into the box and just kind of cross the ball into the box, which they have done very well this season. Like, they're probably the best team in terms of crossing the ball this season. But at the same time, if that is the only way you're going to beat teams, and if you're going to be that one-dimensional, teams are going to figure you out. And I think some teams are starting to figure out the Galaxy, and the fact that all you have to do is just make sure they don't beat you over the air, then you, of course, can win against the Galaxy, because they can't beat you on the ground. They don't have a lot of creative player on the ground that can, of course, make some good little 1-2 passes to get through the defense. So yeah, that's something that I am a little bit concerned about the Galaxy moving forward this season. Then you got the Seattle Sounders at third place, and no doubt that I think they could potentially take the Galaxy spot. They did hit a rough patch lately, but that's because of injuries, and also guys are getting called up by their national team to go to the Gold Cup or Copa America. But now those guys are back, and the fact that they're still in third place and still at that same spot that they were when all those guys they miss in terms of Gold Cup action, yeah, this team is definitely in a very good stage, and that this could maybe be one of the few teams that could really challenge LAFC heading into the playoffs this season. Then after that, this is where the mayhem begins, because from 4 through 12, yeah, this gets very, very interesting, because between 4 through 12, we have an 11-point gap, and I generally think right now with the Western Conference, there is really 4 spots that is up for grabs in terms of playoffs. Well, maybe 3 spots, because I have no doubt that the Timbers is going to make the playoffs with the way that they have so many home games heading into the latter stage, and that I think they're going to start a stretch where they're going to have 12 straight home games for the latter part of the second half of the season. No doubt the Timbers is going to go above the red line, and that eventually they're going to be one of those playoff teams, which really leaves us to just 3 spots left in the Western Conference. And when you look at all these other teams beside the Portland Timber, you got Minnesota, who are currently sitting in 4th place, and while they have gone on a very good run lately, one of the big concern I have with Minnesota is still their road form. And also, I just look at their last month of the schedule, and boy, it is brutal, their last month of the schedule. Like, their last month of the schedule really is pretty much like something similar to what the Quakes are dealing with the last month of their schedule. Their last month of the schedule includes have to play LAFC twice, both home and away, have to play against the Timbers, have to play against the Seattle Sounders, and also have to play against Sporting KC and Houston, and I believe against RSL, which is all teams that they are fighting against to trying to get those playoff spots. So their schedule is going to be absolutely brutal in the last month of the season. And then you got FC Dallas, who, Dallas, they have looked okay this season. I mean, they've definitely done very well at home. On the road, not so much. They haven't been a very good road team. And one of the things that I do concern about this Dallas team is that are they going to have their annual second half collapse? Because we saw this happen for the last 2 seasons, where last season they were near the top of the Western Conference. Then they have their annual collapse in September, and eventually it rides out into the playoffs, where they got an early elimination in the knockout round. And then I don't really need to mention what happened in 2017 because I'm pretty sure if you're a Dallas fan watching this, you know what happened in 2017 and you remember that epic collapse in 2017. I don't really need to mention it just for any Dallas fan to have PTSD moments of what happened in 2017. But yeah, there are concerns that the second half collapse could happen with Dallas in this season again. And then you got the Quakes who, as I mentioned, like Minnesota, they have a murderous last month of a schedule where they have to play against Atlanta on the road, play against the Union at home. Then they got Seattle and Portland away on the final day of the season. That obviously is definitely not the game that I want the Quakes to be facing when you have to go on the road to face against a Timbers team that we have never won against the Timbers on the road. So, that could be a factor to this team. And then you got the Dynamo, which is a team that has really just dropped like a rock ever since they got off to a good start. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that when you decided to go on the road and when you are actually playing some good teams, unlike what happened in the beginning of the season where they've been playing easy team at home, yeah, Houston is started to getting fine now, and that once again the Dynamo is struggling in terms of trying to get points on the road. And I think this past season or this past week has to be the rock bottom of the Dynamo, losing to FC Cincinnati on the road when pretty much every single team has been able to get at least 3 points against FC Cincinnati this season. Then you have RSL, who is also facing the same situation that Houston is doing. They're very good at home, but they're not good on the road. And that, they're kind of having the same situation as last year too, where they also were very good at home, but they were very bad on the road. And they got very lucky the fact that the Galaxy imploded in the last game of the season against the Dynamo to sneak it into the playoffs. Will it happen again this season? Probably not, with the way that how competitive those playoff spot is going to be heading into the final day. I'm going to skip over the Portland Timbers because I know for sure that they're probably going to make the playoffs with all those home games that they're going to win. Then you got Sporting KC. The question with Sporting KC is this eventually going to happen where they're going to have a second half resurgence and that they're not going to be like what TFC was last year, where a team that made deep run into CCL ultimately missed the playoffs because of injuries and guys kind of underachieve. The question is, can they of course get that second half resurgence started? Then you got the Whitecaps, which the Whitecaps is still a team that's kind of in rebuilding mode, and that they have shown some flashes that they can be a playoff team, but they also have shown flashes of why they are probably not ready to be a playoff team. And then you got the Rapids. Even though the Rapids are at rock bottom right now, and that they unfortunately got their unbeaten run ended in the last game against the Revs. The question is, can they of course continue that unbeaten run, and that will they continue to win games to try to dig themselves out of a major hole that they dug themselves in the first 11 games by not even getting a win this season. But having said that, when you look at all these spots, and the good news for each of these teams, for Minnesota, the good news is that they've been very good at home, and that no matter which team that they are facing at home, they tend to always at least get a point or all 3 points against them, and that they have also started to show that they can win on the road too. So they could definitely be a playoff team. For Dallas, they also have been playing very well, and as long as they don't have that second half implosion, I think that they could also be making the playoffs. For the Quakes, as long as if this Almeida system continues and no teams have been able to figure this complicated and very unorthodox system that Almeida is putting in, and also if those signings that we're going to get in the summer transfer window will work out, then yeah, they'll probably make the playoffs. The Dynamo win their home games and at least get a couple of points on the road, they'll make the playoffs. Same thing with RSL. For Sporting KC, second half resurgence, if it happens, then they'll probably make the playoffs. For the Whitecaps, if those players that can actually started to show promise and started to perform well, then they might sneak it into the playoffs. And with the Rapids, that 7-game unbeaten run, maybe it wasn't a fluke. Maybe they can actually continue to have a they can start another unbeaten run to charge themselves up the Western Conference. Like, it's going to be very fascinating to see what's going to happen at the end of the season. And, if I want to make a prediction of the fact that who is going to be those 3 teams that's going to make it up there, I think Minnesota is going to be one of those teams. I think the Quakes could be another one of those teams that make it up. And then the last team that maybe could make it up, I think it's going to all depend on both Dallas not imploding in the second half of the season, and also whether or not if the Dynamo and RSL can at least do something on the road, and that if Sporting KC can get it going in the second half of the season. Like, those are going to... I think if I had to pick one of those teams that maybe gets the last spot, I'm going to say RSL, or... Well, actually, I'm going to say Sporting KC, because I think eventually they are going to get it going and that they are going to make the playoffs this season. But then again, that's just kind of my quick prediction about this. And you saw how in the beginning of the season, how there's been just some prediction that I've made has just been completely wrong this season. You never know. It is going to be a very fascinating race in terms of the playoffs in the Western Conference. And there's no doubt that this season, how in past season when you're a MLS team, and that as long as if you get like maybe about 45 points or even 50 points this season, you're guaranteed to make the playoffs. This season, however, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, I think we are going to see teams in the Western Conference that actually got like 45 points and would have made it in the Eastern Conference, but unfortunately they can't make it in the Western Conference because of how tight and how good it is. And it's just unfortunate because, like I said, Western Conference is much more stronger than what the Eastern Conference was last year. So yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it, my look at the standings so far. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of the standings right now, and let me know the team that you support, whether or not you believe that they are going to make the playoffs or not, and which team are going to make the playoffs heading into the end of the season from both the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference, and who's going to miss out of the playoffs at the end of the season. So let me know your prediction in the comments below, and yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.